let us take a look at tonight's draft. And it was really crazy. So I've added some numbers to what I had during the live stream. No surprise at one. Darlene was number one. Hockey News, TSN's Craig Button, and then Sportsnet's own mock draft. Those are the color codings I've got. So Hockey News is in green, TSN's Craig Button's in red, and Sportsnet's in purple. And let's go. Number 2, Svechnikov across the board. Number 3 is where it starts to turn odd. Hockey News had him at 18, but the Hockey News was published about a month ago. Both TSN and Sportsnet had Kotkaniemi at 3, but this was after it had been revealed that Kotkaniemi was probably going at 3. So there is some reach there. And the announcers admitted when he was drafting him that Kotkaniemi's a risk. Kotkaniemi's a risk because he likely doesn't play this year. He might push for a job, he may not. The more draft-ready guys move down. Brady Tkachuk, who was number 3 on the Hockey News list, number 5 on the TSN mock draft, number 6 on the Sportsnet mock draft, gets taken at 4. The highest that anybody named Tkachuk has been drafted. I'm happy with that pick, to be honest. I think it's a good pick for Ottawa. Now, did I expect Zadina? Yeah, probably. But I knew they weren't just going to hand away the pick. The idea that, well, they're just going to give it to Colorado so they can tank for Hughes next year, that's just ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense at all. Number 5. This is where you officially go off script. At 12 is where Barrett Hayton was, according to the Hockey News. At 11 is where Craig Button had him, and at 12 is where Sportsnet had him. Hayden's a guy that John Chayka probably could have found later on if he traded down. Odds are he may have looked into it. He may have decided, to heck with it. I'll just keep my own pick. Not taking Zadina, though. That's brave. And if it works out, he looks like a genius with Hayton. And if Hayton doesn't work out, he may look foolish. Because at 6, Philip Zadina, who had fallen off a bit. He was number 4 on Hockey News, number 4 on Craig Button's list, and number 5 on Sportsnet. He gets taken at 6. So Detroit, you guys came out as winners tonight. You really did. Detroit hasn't won much in a while, so let's go ahead and salute the Detroit Red Wings. Vancouver. I didn't do a happy dance. And I know there's people who are probably like, man, Shannon didn't seem very happy with Quinn Hughes. I'm cautiously optimistic. I am so used to Canucks draft picks over the years. I think it's all from pre-Jim Benning. The drafts, honestly, since he took over, have been excellent. You look at Brock Besser's been fantastic. Levy hasn't come over yet, but he could still become a top 4 defenseman. It's only been a couple years since he was drafted. Of course, Pettersson, there's all kinds of excitement about Elias Pettersson, and I got tons of it. So I am very optimistic that Quinn Hughes is going to be an NHL defenseman. It won't be this year. He was number 6 on Hockey News. He was number 6 on TSN and number 8 on Sportsnet. And he gets drafted at 7. I have no problem with that. Did I want Noah Dobson? I did. I wanted Dobson. I thought Dobson would have been nice. I thought Boqvist was an attractive pick too. And what scares me is Boqvist goes at 8. He was rated 5th by the Hockey News. He was rated 7th by TSN and 11th by Sportsnet. His stock had dropped because other guys had passed him. But just for the pure skill of it, Boqvist is a very, very interesting pick. And I think Chicago did well for themselves. At 9, we go off script again. Vitaly Kravtsov is picked up by the New York Rangers at 9. He was 24th on the Hockey News, 28th on TSN, and 19th on Sportsnet. So being taken at 9th is a bit of a risk. I did see him as high as 12th on one mock draft going into the draft. 9th, it's a reach, but the Rangers honestly did very well with their other 2 picks. I think they did. A right winger, good addition. We'll see how it works out for them. At 10, defenseman Evan Bouchard. Yeah, Evan Bouchard going to Edmonton. I want to make mention of the perception that he looked miserable being drafted by Edmonton. Maybe we pay more attention. For us in Canada, they had the interview after he was drafted where he was wearing the Oilers jersey and he was sitting down with Tara Slone. And honestly, to me, he just seemed nervous. I didn't think he seemed upset with being drafted by Edmonton. To me, he just looked nervous. He was number 7 on Hockey News, number 10 on TSN, number 7 on Sportsnet. He may have figured he was going to go sooner than he did. He may have watched Kravtsov go up there and he might have thought, wait, that should have been my spot. So he might have been upset that he went later than he thought he would, and he may very well have just been nervous. These are young kids, so I don't put a whole lot of stock into the fact that he didn't look very happy putting on an Oilers jersey. At 11, Oliver Wahlstrom goes. And at 12, Noah Dobson goes, as the New York Islanders did very, very well for themselves. Wahlstrom, 8th on the Hockey News, 9th on TSN, 9th on Sportsnet. Dobson was 9th in the Hockey News, 8th on TSN, and 4th on Sportsnet. Dobson's stock went up a lot, with a lot of fans, and I think a lot of pundits, coming out of the Memorial Cup. Clearly, NHL GMs weren't as moved by his performance. He did slip to 12th. What this does is the Islanders have a winger and a defenseman that should be ready to step in, not necessarily this year, but probably next year. And it's going to be impressive if the Islanders can maintain their status by keeping Tavares and potentially bringing somebody else in. Lou Lamoriello can turn this ship around quickly. It'll be interesting to see what he does. At 13, I got thrown. Ty Dellandrea. He was rated 16th by the Hockey News, 27th by Sportsnet, and 15th, or 27th by TSN and 15th by Sportsnet. So he goes at 13 to Dallas, which is higher than anybody else had him, but not that far out of line. And once you get down into this range, it's not really that big of a deal. I had expected somebody else instead. I'd kind of been pulling for Joe Veleno, but Veleno was about to go into free fall. Joel Farabee goes at 14 to the Philadelphia Flyers. He was rated 13th by the Hockey News. He was rated 13th by TSN and 18th by Sportsnet. So Sportsnet, less impressed with him or just more impressed with other people. Farabee, a winger for the Flyers, a team that definitely needed forwards coming into this draft, and they did pretty well for themselves. To be honest, they did. Gregory Denisenko goes at 15 to the Florida Panthers. He was 22nd in the Hockey News, 18th on Sportsnet, and 18th on TSN, and 13th on Sportsnet. So Denisenko goes right about the median between those three numbers, if your math is bad. It's off by a couple. He was probably drafted a couple spots ahead of where we might have predicted, but I trust Florida, and they do well with European players. So I would expect Denisenko to just fit right in there. And that's going to be fun for them. Martin Kaut goes at 16, which is higher than the Hockey News had him at 27. TSN had him at 21, and Sportsnet had him at 16. So Sportsnet's right on the money with this one, going to Colorado. Colorado as well. Young forwards. They like their young forwards, and they pick up another one. At 17, here's a guy who dove a bit. Ty Smith, who was supposed to go around the 10 spot. But, of course, Bouchard slipped down, a couple of guys bumped up, and everything went to hell. Smith going at 17, he was rated at 10th by Hockey News, 12th by TSN, and 10th by Sportsnet. So, New Jersey probably did pretty well for themselves here. They needed a defenseman. Done. And I don't know if he'll push for a job in the fall, but and I say that. He's probably going to college. Anyways, because most of these guys aren't going to push for jobs. The consensus seems to be that Dahlin, Svechnikov, and Zadina are guys who may push for jobs in the fall. Outside of that, you're probably looking at a ways down the road, which wouldn't be any different than the 2017 draft. Usually the guys at the top end are the guys who are most ready, and then the rest of them are just going to take a little while to develop. At 18, Columbus goes off the board and picks up Liam Foudy. Foudy was off the board for Hockey News. He was 44th on the Hockey News, 30th for TSN, and 23rd for Sportsnet. So his numbers gradually get better. He ends up at 18th. He's a center. I kind of trust Columbus when drafting centers. 19, Jay O'Brien. And this was a bit of a surprise, too, for Flyers fans. Because at this point, we're like, wait, where's Veleno? Veleno was supposed to go before this. O'Brien was 61st in the Hockey News. 26th on both TSN and Sportsnet. So clearly his stock rose over the last couple of months. And he goes at 19th. So there's something there that Ron Hextall likes. Again, he's adding another forward. It's a good idea to add forward prospects when your defense looks like it's going to be stacked for a while. At 20, LA kind of sort of went off the board. Not really. Rasmus Kupari was ranked 25th by the Hockey News, 29th by TSN, 24th by Sportsnet. He goes at 20th, so it's ahead of where he was projected, but not by a whole lot. So again, LA picks up a center in the first round for the second year in a row. Clearly, down the middle, that kind of depth. They realize how important that is. A lot of teams did. There's a lot of centers that bumped up into the first round that weren't projected to. And it seemed like 2 months ago we were talking about how heavy this draft is with defensemen and right wing and left wingers. And then as the draft got closer and closer, it seemed like GM said, we are going to draft a center. At 21. And here's where I thought Brian Burke was going to lose his mind. And Brian Burke doesn't like hats. Let me make this very, very clear. Brian Burke made it very clear. He doesn't like the draft picks wear hats when they go up there for the draft. He hates it. He doesn't want them wearing hats. He doesn't care about any kind of deals that the hat companies have with the NHL. None of his draft picks when he was a GM ever wore a hat. He doesn't believe in it. And he doesn't really have a whole lot of faith in Ryan Merkley either. Merkley was rated at 32nd on the Hockey News. Did not show up in mock drafts on either TSN or Sportsnet in the first round. Merkley is... there's attitude, rumors, defensive responsibility issues. But think about it. If you're going to pick an organization for a draft pick to go to who needs to work on defense and might have a bit of an attitude, you're going to send him to San Jose. Because they're not going to put up with that crap, and they're going to teach him defense. Merkley seemed happy when he got drafted, and then when they mentioned to him about his liabilities, I'm like, really? You guys are bringing up his defensive deficiencies? Even as an 18-year-old, I'd tell you where to go. And that's, I don't put that on Tara Sloan. Tara may have somebody in her ear telling her, hey, ask him about this. At 22, the Rangers trade for this pick. They acquired it from Ottawa, right here. Ottawa traded 22 for 26 and 48. So tomorrow, the Ottawa Senators are drafting at 48. Keandre Miller. I love the name, and I love the kid's story. His mother, of course, was all of the mothers were in tears, but his mother seemed to be really, really happy, and he seemed to be really genuinely just moved that the Rangers traded for him. Because really, honestly, when you're at the draft and you're not sure where you're going to go, and a team trades to get you, so they trade to move up so they can make sure they get you, that has to feel special. That has to feel different than for other picks that, you kind of fell in our laps, like at Evan Bouchard in Edmonton. Keandre Miller was 26th on Hockey News, 24th on TSN, and 21st on Sportsnet. And there's a lot of buzz around this kid, so getting him at 22, the Rangers may very well have a keeper here. Isaac Lundstrom, who was rated 14th by Hockey News, 16th by TSN, and 22nd by Sportsnet, goes at 23 to the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks, over the last few years, have managed to get draft picks that have slid down to them. Max Jones and Sam Steele both did that a couple years ago. They both looked like they could push for jobs this fall, and now they've got that with Lundstrom. So they're smart. I will say that about Anaheim. They're very smart at the draft table. At 24, Minnesota went off the board. Philip Johansson is rated 38th by the Hockey News. I think that's Ian. Yeah, he's rated 38th on the Hockey News, and he wasn't in the mock draft by either TSN or Sportsnet. At 25, one of my new favorite names in hockey, Dominic Bach. He had been rated 28th by the Hockey News, but both TSN and Sportsnet had him at 20th. German kid went later than he was supposed to. So St. Louis may very well have found themselves a keeper at 25. And they managed to trade up for that. So again, Dominic Bach, St. Louis traded to get him. They traded to get the number 29, or they traded their number 29 to get 25 from Toronto, and they also gave up the 76th pick overall in this year's draft in order to get him. So no harm, no foul. Toronto picks up another draft pick, which is what was rumored all day. That was what was rumored all day about Kyle Dubas. He was looking at probably trading down and picking up another pick. So that's exactly what he did. Then Ottawa goes back up, and they went off the board too. Jacob Bernard Docker, almost said Decker. Jacob Bernard Docker, 39th by Hockey News, not in the mock drafts of TSN or Sportsnet. He goes 26th, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with this kid. Ottawa's got a lot of issues, and we all know that, and we've all talked about it. We've all had our laughs at their expense, and it's too bad. What happens with this kid will be very interesting in the coming years, because they do need help on the blue line. They have some good young prospects, yes, but you can never have too many. So I'll be interested to watch what this kid does, because it was kind of an off the board pick. Then up goes Chicago, and there were a few guys they could have went after who are on this side of the board and didn't go in the first round, but we'll get to those guys in a minute. Nicolas Baudouin, who was number 42 on the Hockey News, doesn't show up on TSN or Sportsnet's mock draft, goes 27th to the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll see how that works out for them. Nils Lundqvist goes to the New York Rangers at 28. He was 51st on the Hockey News. 31st on TSN, didn't show up on the Sportsnet mock draft. When the Rangers go off the board twice, that's some risk. Although it's not off the board according to TSN, just according to the Hockey News. So take it with a grain of salt. Rasmus Sandin, sorry. Toronto traded down. They picked this kid up at 29. He was rated 17th by the Hockey News, 25th by TSN, and 28th by Sportsnet. So going at 29th, I think they got themselves a bargain. I think they got a kid that probably should have been off the board, but wasn't. And I think that Kyle Dubas is going to look pretty smart with this a few years from now. Then the biggest faller in the draft. So sometimes it's a kid that falls for size reasons. Sometimes it's a kid who falls for attitude reasons or lack of physicality. Maybe his combine was bad. Joe Veleno dropped. He was number 11 on the Hockey News, number 15 on TSN, number 17 on Sportsnet, gets drafted 30th. What this means is Detroit with Joe Veleno and Filip Zadina come out of this with two of the more recognizable names in the draft, and maybe this rebuild isn't going to last that long. Maybe this draft will be remembered as the year that Detroit came out with 4 or 5 future solid NHL players. Two forwards when they needed a defenseman might be kind of surprising to some, but you draft the best guy available. Zadina was the best guy available, and yeah, I think Veleno was the best player available of the ones that were remaining. Then the Capitals go up, and they draft Alex. Guess who his favorite player is? Ovechkin. What's Ovechkin's first name? Alex. So Alex, who's a huge fan of Alex, gets drafted 31st. He was 54 in the Hockey News. Doesn't show up on TSN or Sportsnet's mock drafts. The other trade, of course, was Orpik and Grubauer to Colorado for a for this year's second-round pick of number 47 overall. The interesting thing with that is this. Grubauer apparently signed a 3-year extension in Colorado, and Orpik is likely to be bought out if they can't trade him. So Orpik is just there. They just took that money from Washington so they could get Grubauer for a second-round pick. It makes both teams happy. The Capitals get Orpik's money off so they can sign John Carlson and keep him, and Colorado gets a backup goaltender in Grubauer to replace Jonathan Bernier, and now they've got a backup who can really push for that starting job if they need it, and they sign him. So this works out for both teams. Sarah Knoll was 29th in the Hockey News, 14th on Sportsnet and TSN's mock drafts. Did not go today. Ryan McLeod, 20th in the hockey news, 17th on TSN, 25th on Sportsnet, also didn't go today. Bodie Wild, who I kept waiting for, 15th on the hockey news, 19th on TSN, 27th on Sportsnet. Jared McIsaac, who was 34th on the hockey news, 22nd on Sportsnet, on TSN, was not on the Sportsnet mock draft. Akil Thomas, who was 19th in the hockey news, 23rd on TSN's, and 29th on Sportsnet's mock drafts. Then the hockey news went way off script itself. Jet Wu was 21st, Jacob Olofsson 23rd, Sampo Ranta 30th, Matthias Samuelsson 31st. None of them showed up on mock drafts by TSN or Sportsnet. And Jonathan Berggren, who was 36th on the THN hockey news list. He's 30th on a mock draft of Sportsnet. And Kirill Marchenko, who was 65th on the hockey news, came in at 31st on TSN's list. So these guys who are on the right that weren't drafted today, I would think Sarah Knoll, Ryan McLeod, Bodie Wild, Jared McIsaac, Akil Thomas, these guys are likely to go early tomorrow. I'll be very interested to see if Buffalo, with the number 32 pick tomorrow, grabs Bodie Wild. To me, that's an automatic. It's another defenseman to go with Dahlin, and it continues building up your defensive prospects. To me, it's a no-brainer. But this draft was so off-script, which is fun. It was a fun draft. So for all that were a part of that live stream tonight, thank you so much for your participation. And if you sat through this after that, thank you so much for watching so much of The Hockey Guy. There you go. There's the draft recap. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who surprised you the most? Who surprised you the least? And who do you think goes 32 tomorrow? I will be doing a live stream tomorrow morning. When we get rounds 2 through 7 done, they do not go up to the podium. They don't announce these picks on the board like they do with the first round. It is just lightning. So we'll be working through those picks, trying to figure out where some of these guys go, and then it's a matter of figuring out who won at the end of the day. And figuring out who won on draft day is virtually impossible because you're dealing with 18, 17 in some cases, 19 in others. 17, 18, 19-year-old kids who haven't really fully developed into what they're going to be yet. But we do our best to try to figure out who's going to be the best. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I'll talk to you guys again soon.